This will be the last in our series on Parisian roots and roots of American independence. In the previous mini-course, we talked about John Paul Jones. He was British, and he fought the Royal Navy. And you can imagine how furious the British were about that. Here's a cartoon showing John Paul Jones as a pirate. But at least John Paul Jones wasn't English. You can imagine how even more furious the British were when an Englishman called Tom Paine took sides with the Americans. Here's a picture of Tom Paine. And there's a plaque on this house, we're still in the Odeon neighborhood, that says that this is where Tom Paine lived. Just a few words on Tom Paine. He was a very unusual Englishman. His dad was a Quaker, and he himself was kind of a socialist before there was socialism. He wrote a pamphlet that you may have heard of called Common Sense. And in that pamphlet, he said, men and women are equal. This is at the end of the 18th century. He said, black people and white people are equal. Just let this bus go by. Well before any country had abolished slavery. He was something of an anarchist. His pamphlet called Common Sense went to a print run, or total print runs, of 150,000. Can you believe that, in a period when 90% of English-speaking people were illiterate? He was also popular in France. His writings were translated into French, and took a very active part in helping the American insurgents. He was considered obviously a traitor by the British. At the end, he was made a French citizen and took part in the first kind of Republican convention, convention, and I think helped draft the Charter of Rights, Human Rights, and so on. Now to end, I just want to say how things turned around. Turnabout is fair play, after all. And talk a little bit about American roots of the French democracy, French Republic, the Revolution. Incidentally, Tom Paine was a humanist, and when the decision was taken to guillotine the last French king, Louis XVI, he was against that. He said, no, we shouldn't be killing people. On July 14, 1789, the Bastille was taken. And it was decided to dismantle it. It was a symbol of oppression and so on. In fact, it now seems that it wasn't all that terrible a prison. If you say the Bastille to a Frenchman today, he still is mostly going to think of chains clanking, screams of people being tortured, cells with bars and so on. No, in fact, there were exactly 7 prisoners in the Bastille on that day. They lived in apartments. Caterers brought in their food, their meals, and so on. And of those prisoners, 4 were counterfeiters, immediately reincarcerated elsewhere. 1 was a political prisoner who'd been there for something like 30 years. He was let go. There was a nobleman convicted of incest. I haven't been able to find out what happened to him. And number 7 was a madman whose parents paid to have him live there. Okay. it still was a symbol of oppression. It was decided to dismantle it and sell the stone. The governor, named by the new revolutionary power, was the Marquis of Lafayette. Although a nobleman, French nobleman, he had fought with Americans in the future territory of the United States. Today there are something like 40 towns in today's United States which are called Lafayette after him. As governor of the Bastille, which was to be dismantled, he called on Tom Paine, gave him a set of keys to the Bastille, and asked him to take them and deliver them to President George Washington as French thanks for American inspiration for the French Revolution. And they are today, that set of keys, must be a pretty impressive set of keys, at Washington's Manor, Mount Vernon. As an expression of French thanks for democratic inspiration. Just a word to end about George Washington. A little fun. I like to have a little fun in these courses. If you look at a $1 bill, American currency, you'll find a picture of George Washington which more or less corresponds to this image. The sculptor, the French sculptor Houdon, did a bust of Washington. Now, in that representation, you see, he's got pretty big cheeks compared with the first one, which is also on the US $1 bill. What's the difference? As far as I've been able to tell, in the first one, he didn't have his false teeth. For the Houdon sculpture, he put in his false teeth. I hope that's not too biting a way to end this series. Thank you very much for your attention.